Hello, welcome back to the You at Your Best podcast. I'm your host, Morgan. My apartment is right in front of the road, and there's a lot of cars driving by right now, so this episode may be a little bit louder. You may hear a bunch of cars driving by, and I wish I could fix that, but I know that there is like this thing on I use Audacity, and I know that there is this thing on there where you can take away the background noise, but every single time I do that, it makes my voice sound really muffled. I don't know why, but I did that with one episode that I actually released, and my voice just, like, the audio just sounds weird. So sorry for that, but it's what I have right now and it's what works right now. But for this week's episode, I wanted to talk about becoming a more empathetic and emotionally mature person. I know some people, like, they just are naturally more empathetic and naturally more emotionally mature, and a lot of the time that is the people who had better parents growing up, who had better childhoods growing up, the people who had traumatic experiences or had maybe families that weren't the best towards them usually struggle with empathy and emotional maturity. And that's why I think we really need to stop judging people who are emotionally immature, because it's just like, I guess it's just like a core belief that I have that, like, I've talked about so many times on this podcast, just shame and judgment never fixes anything. It only makes people feel worse. So I get it why it's hard whenever you're the one who's personally experiencing it, being around emotionally immature, non-empathetic people. It can be exhausting, and being someone who used to be pretty emotionally immature and kind of not really empathetic, I always had empathy. I think that's just a huge part of being autistic for me. I've always been a very highly empathetic person, but a lot of it got pushed down because of my life experiences. So even if I had that empathy, I didn't have the emotional maturity to be able to interact with people in an emotionally mature way. Sometimes I would come off as non-empathetic because I didn't know how to interact with people, even though the entire time I always felt that empathy because I've always had such a strong sense of empathy and even such a strong sense of morals, but I just didn't understand how to express myself in that way. And that's something that I'm still learning, but especially after having my baby, I have matured so much in so many ways, and I feel like emotional maturity is something that just naturally comes with age, but it also naturally comes with healing. There are some people who are in even their 60s and still very emotionally immature because they never got the chance to heal. And like I was saying, like, those people, I don't want to judge them or shame them in any way because it's not their fault that it happened to them. But also, I think it's important that we distance ourselves from those people because it just creates more stress in our lives. Like, at this point, I can't even spend time around those people sometimes. Like, sometimes I have to, but it can be really hard, especially whenever you know that you used to be very similar to them. And you kind of, maybe during that time, you kind of felt left behind. And I know that that's probably how they feel too. But truth is, as much as we want to help people and fix other people's issue, that's not our problem. And it's really sad. And I will do everything I can to be kind and understanding with those people because I think that's important. But being kind with them and being emotionally close to them are two different things. And I tried to avoid everything I can to make them feel ashamed because I know whenever I was in that place, I was already dealing with so much deep-rooted shame that someone saying something so small literally would have just set me off, and I would have went down this spiral of self-hatred even more. And I know it's not our issue to walk on eggshells because we don't want to set them off, but also at the same time, I guess just the empathy, because I know what it feels like. I know how hard it is. I don't want to make someone else feel that way because it was horrible. I was so unhappy, so self-critical, and I know that they're probably in that same place. And I just don't want any other person to feel like that. It breaks my heart. I don't know how I went through life with something that was so difficult. And I know like we are very resilient. So during the time, it didn't really feel like I was going through. I definitely knew that there was something going on, but it didn't feel as bad as it is now looking back at it. But I just know like it's hard, and I try to be kind to those people and I try to be understanding, but I also try to emotionally distance myself from them. So being a more empathetic person to me means trying to understand where a person is coming from, even if you don't fully understand what they're trying to say or why they feel the way that they do. Trying to understand and coming at it from a place of wanting to understand rather than wanting to be understood. And I know for a lot of us that can be really hard, especially if we've spent so much of our lives feeling so misunderstood. It's only human nature to feel like the people don't understand us whenever we're maybe in an argument or talking about something. And I've noticed something that I do is sometimes I will repeat myself, like continuously repeat the same thing because I'm trying to be understood. Because whenever that other person is trying to be understood as well, it makes me feel like they don't understand me. So something that I always try to do is pay attention to what they're saying. Really try to understand where they're coming from, even if it maybe doesn't make sense to me in my brain. And a huge part of that for me, something that makes it really easy for me to keep on doing that, is to understand that every single human being feels the exact same feelings. The emotions may be different. We may even logically not understand where they're coming from, but that feeling is always there. If someone is telling us something that we did that really hurt their feelings and we can't understand how it hurt their feelings, we don't have to logically understand in order to understand their feelings, because every single human being has felt those feelings. And I just look at it as like that person feels the same way that I have felt so many times. So I can be the person who makes them finally feel understood. And sometimes that can be really hard, but something that I've talked about in previous episodes, I really like to look at it from an outside perspective. Every single person's brain is different. And I know it can be hard because sometimes we can feel triggered. It feels like they're coming at us. It feels like they're maybe saying that we're bad people, but that's not what they're saying most of the time. They're just trying to make you understand how they feel. And if you're coming at it from a place of, I have to make you understand that I'm not bad, you're just going to make them feel worse. And it's honestly just going to continue making you feel worse, or making you appear worse to them, because you didn't make them feel good. You made them feel unheard and misunderstood. Just think about how you feel whenever you're trying to talk to someone about something that bothers you and they just keep on dismissing you. Or at least it feels like they're dismissing you. Reality is they're probably not. They're probably just doing the same thing that you do, and maybe they just feel like they're being attacked. Maybe they feel like you think that they're a horrible person, and they don't. No human being wants to be seen as a horrible person. But a huge part of emotional maturity is noticing those things, like looking at things from an outside perspective. Yes, that person may be making you feel bad, but also you're probably making them feel bad too. And it's probably just this pattern of miscommunication that is repeating itself based off of ego, because our egos force us to see things selfishly. We don't notice that that person is just human, innocently misunderstanding you in the same way that you're innocently misunderstanding them. A lot of the time we can be more understanding to ourselves because we get why we're acting the way that we do. But whenever you also understand the reason why another person is acting how they're acting, which is usually just to be understood, it helps you have more empathy for that person. Realizing that the human experience is so similar with everyone, it puts the situation into a totally different perspective, because you start to see things from not only your own human mind, you see things from the world. You see things from a viewpoint where you're looking down almost as if your soul is taking over and your soul is allowing you to see the truth that your human brain may block off. And it's weird that a lot of people don't realize that emotional maturity brings you closer to your higher self and your soul, and all of this stuff is intertwined, like healing, being closer to your soul, understanding who you are, understanding how your brain works, understanding how other people's brains work to a certain extent. Obviously everyone's brain is different, but understanding the human mind in general, it brings you so much closer to who you're meant to be, and in a way kind of takes you out of the human body. So since all of this is true, it's also true that we actually can understand where other people are coming from. If we let go of our egos and only focus on the emotions, we can understand it. And I know that can be so hard. But if we really focus on the emotion, like look at it from an outside perspective, not from ourselves and our human minds, tune into your intuition and ask your higher self, like, what is this person feeling right now? And of course they can explain it to you, but you don't even need an explanation. Your intuition will just know. The more you connect with yourself, the more you heal, your intuition just naturally understands. Whenever you start to really focus on that outside perspective and really notice, like, and I don't think that's just some magical thing. I think scientifically it makes sense because all humans experience the same emotions. The same feelings. The emotions and the actions and the way that the person presents themselves may be different, but deep down they feel exactly the same, so we know exactly what that feels like. Their brain may be wired differently, but we still know that feeling. So instead of looking at the action or the outside perspective, look at the feeling. Look at how you would feel in that situation. And like, that really helps with empathy because you genuinely know what it feels like. Every single human being knows what it feels like to be insanely sad about something. Every single human knows that depressive state that we can get into, that overwhelming anxiety. Of course, it may be harder for some than others, but the feeling is still the same. So really tune into your intuition and ask your higher self, how is this person feeling? Look at it from an outside perspective. Try to push your ego away and just think about how you would feel in that situation, how you have felt those specific emotions. And even like tuning into your more feminine side, you naturally are more intuitive. Being a woman, but also being a human being, every single human being, like I talked about in a previous episode, every single human being has a feminine and a masculine side, a divine feminine and a divine masculine side. And the more feminine side is more intuitive. It's not woo-woo, it's science. And I'm feeling really anxious right now and having a really hard time talking about this, I think, because I'm a little bit scared to put this out there and share this part of myself because I don't want people to think that I'm crazy. I feel like I've got more of a positive response from my podcast whenever I don't talk about this stuff, but I want to be more authentic, and it's important to me that I share this stuff. Obviously not all of my episodes are going to talk about this kind of stuff, but it's a huge part of me, and I truly believe that I am more of a spiritual person, especially as I've started to heal. I feel like I've just became so close to my higher self, and I can thank podcasts for that. I can thank myself for that. I can thank my life experiences for that. And I know a lot of people will see someone who is successful and who is really in tune with themselves and maybe feel really insecure about themselves, wonder like, I can't be that way. Trust me, I've felt like that before. But every single human being is incredible and is powerful and has a soul, and I don't really believe that there's only certain people who can spread stuff. I believe every single human being, once they connect to themselves, can really spread their own personal beliefs. And I think we live in a society where a lot of people kind of just follow other people and worship other people, when reality is every single one of us is a person that should be worshipped and followed. I believe that every single person is divine and a leader, and I feel like we have a society where we kind of just believe that only certain people are capable of that. But I don't believe that's true. I believe that we're all capable of being divine leaders once we connect with ourselves and once we understand ourselves. We can get to that place of truly being that person that everyone looks at and just thinks, I can only be a follower. I have to follow this person. You don't have to follow anyone. You can be a leader. All of this is true, and I want to kind of just share ways to be more empathetic and ways to get closer to this higher version of yourself. I know I talk about this all the time, but one of the biggest things is self-care. You are so much closer to your higher self whenever you are taking care of yourself. Whenever you are taking the time to do things that really bring you joy, really fulfill you. And I know so many people think that as we become adults, we have to let go of that stuff. But you don't have to let go of things just for another thing. Like, I saw a video on Instagram a couple hours ago where the woman was talking about how she used to be the type of person that thought that she was being productive whenever she was just constantly busy, constantly doing something, being a busybody, constantly cleaning, constantly just up and doing something. And the opposite is actually true. We are being way more productive whenever we are doing what our soul and our body actually needs. And if that means doing self-care and not doing a million things, not cleaning the house constantly just because you want it to look a certain way, or you're maybe scared of the people around you's opinion, none of that matters, because it's never going to bring you closer to your higher self. It's only going to bring you stress and anxiety. And whenever we're stressed and anxious all the time, we cannot be in tune with our intuition, which in return can make us less empathetic people. It's important for us to connect these things and become closer to that aspect of ourselves and being more mindful, being more present. And I know being present is really hard. I have the brain that is just constantly thinking and thinking. But I also know that even though I label myself with that, I can find a way to not be like that. I can manifest that I am more of a mindful person if I just truly believe that I'm a mindful person, because it has been scientifically proven that human beings, our reality is only in our heads, and whatever we believe is what's true. And if I believe that my brain makes it hard for me to be mindful, then that's going to be true. But if I genuinely believe that that's not an obstacle for me, then it's not going to be an obstacle for me. And manifesting can be really hard because there can be things that we have a really hard time believing. You have to genuinely believe it, and that's the really hard part, because we have so much doubt about these things, and we have so many life experiences that prove the opposite of what we want to believe. And sometimes just telling yourself doesn't really work because you don't actually believe it. You're just telling yourself. And I get why manifesting can be such a turnoff for people who are really struggling, like people who are having a really hard time with money, and someone just tells them, like, you can manifest that you have more money and everything will be okay. Like, it kind of just sounds like those people are just out of their minds and non-empathetic and don't understand the situation. Like, they're just privileged, so privileged that they don't understand what you're going through. So I get why hearing those things can be so infuriating, but they are true. And as hard as it is for me to say that, as scary as it is for me to admit that I believe that, I don't want to come off as a person who is out of touch, but it is true that what you believe becomes your reality. So if you genuinely believe that you will have the life that you want, you will have money coming to you, it will happen. Because we create our reality, and that is scientifically proven. That's not just woo-woo talk. It's true. Because whatever we believe, we work hard towards that belief. If we believe that our lives suck and no one understands us and no one knows what we go through, that's going to be true. Because we're going to subconsciously make that happen. We're going to subconsciously act in ways that make people respond in that way. And all of life is just like response after response. How we go at people creates the response that they have to us. And it's crazy that people think that this is woo-woo talk when this is exactly how the world works. So if you're like me and believe that you can't be a mindful person because of some obstacles that you've had, I get why it can be so hard to let go of that label of yourself. But I promise you, once you do, things get so much better. And I'm also promising myself, because I've talked in my previous episodes about this kind of stuff and how difficult they have made my life. And in a way, it's really hard to let go of those things, because sometimes it can feel like letting go of those things means that I never went through that. And it can also mean that like maybe we are so scared of letting go of what's comfortable for us. Those struggles are what make us who we are. So I get it. I know it's hard, but I never really do this, but I'm going to give an assignment for this episode. I haven't done this since the very first time I had my podcast. And this is an assignment that I'm going to do too. Find one thing that you really struggle with and you really label yourself with, and think about how that thing is messing up your life, and then try to retrain your brain to think differently. Think about how that thing isn't even an issue for you. Like an example for me is sometimes it feels like my ADHD makes it really hard for me to keep a clean house, which is true and that is my experience. But if I really want to experiment with that, and so I'm going to try for the next week or a couple of weeks, focus on that. And instead of telling myself that I struggle to keep a clean apartment, tell myself that I am amazing at keeping a clean apartment. And a way to make this more logical for the people who are maybe still struggling to believe that this is true, that can happen because with ADHD, I can create a special interest in being more clean. It can. And so I will subconsciously start to believe that I am more clean, and it will become a special interest of me to have a clean, nice apartment. Okay, and that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next Sunday.